Hello you lot, Miller Corner here, welcome back once again, and I'll be honest with you, this is not a video I've been looking forward to shooting. Since I came back from my trip to Poland a few weeks back, I've had a few people messaging me since I put the video up, commenting and speaking to me on Facebook, saying what's next for the Super Seicento, when are your next mods, what's coming for it next, is there going to be some sort of debrief for it, when's that first drive of the 1242 engine swap coming, loads of questions about the car, and I'll be honest with you, as much as I have put out various videos since the road trip, I've avoided directly talking about the car for a few reasons, and if I'm very honest, it's not good news. On the final day of the trip, which I don't think you will have seen very much of because I didn't film a great deal on the final day, I was on my way back home. I'd stayed in Potsdam at the exact same hotel I stayed at on the first day going over, and I was back in the car on the long haul all the way from Germany back to France for the Eurotunnel to then get home that night, and I would have been home with the Eurotunnel around about 8:30, 9 o'clock UK time. Sadly, that didn't come to fruition. About 150 miles on from my hotel on the way back to the Eurotunnel port in Calais, I was in Germany and I needed to get some petrol because I was getting a bit low. I was on the Autobahn doing 75-80 miles an hour, and as much as the Super Seicento is very economical, you do still burn through a lot of fuel covering a lot of miles like that, even in a relatively economical car. So I pulled off the Autobahn to go and get some more fuel. I was at a junction waiting to pull forward. There was a lorry coming down the road, coming down on the right hand side and heading what would have been passing me from left to right. The lorry kept going and unfortunately it took my car with it. That's right, the lorry took out the front of the Super Seicento. It hit the front of the car and pushed it a good 5 feet along the road. The first thing you need to know is that I am absolutely fine. I wasn't even slightly injured in the accident. I am absolutely perfectly okay. It was only my pride that was hurt. The car, however, didn't come off so well. It had done a brilliant job in protecting me and keeping me safe, but the car itself was in a much less good way. The whole front passenger side of the car was wiped out by the truck, including the headlight, the wing, the bonnet. The bumper had been obliterated, and I can tell you that the radiator and clutch fluid had gone on account of the steam that came out of it and the fact the clutch pedal immediately went to the floor. Happily, the car's fire prevention system cut in, which then meant of course that the engine wasn't even on anymore. The automatic fuel cutoff kicked in, which meant that the engine was automatically prevented from getting fuel to prevent any fires starting. I was extremely shaken up by the accident. I was shaking, I was shouting. It was genuinely one of the scariest moments of my life, and I was left with a car that was by no means drivable. Before all the lawyers jump into the comments, I can tell you the legal side of things has been sorted. All the insurance companies have been spoken to, all that stuff has been done. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case with the car itself, because whilst my company for insurance do offer European insurance, they won't retrieve any cars involved in an accident in Europe. Just as well, I'd taken out European breakdown cover for my trip into the EU, and thankfully that does cover both accidents and obviously recovery. But first things first, I had to get the car recovered somewhere because obviously I couldn't just leave it at the side of the road in Germany. What followed is what I can only describe as the worst day of my life. I spent 10 hours at the side of the road waiting for a German recovery truck to turn up to pick my car up. The recovery took ages. I kept getting phone calls from the UK office of the recovery company, their general European office, and their German representative specifically to try and work out where I was. I knew that I was just around the corner from the petrol station because that's where I'd been heading when the accident had occurred, but I didn't actually know where it was. I got Google Maps up on my phone, I gave them the postcode that I could find, and I told them it was near a McDonald's and a Shell petrol station, but still I was sat in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language with no one to help me and a car that was by no means drivable for 10 hours waiting for recovery. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, some German guys broke down in a van and ended up parking just in front of me. A recovery truck arrived about half an hour later, but it was for them, not for me, and there is nothing worse, I can tell you, than seeing a recovery truck turn up after you've already been waiting for nearly 5 hours for that truck to then not be for you. That really hurt. I was in constant communication with the UK office, the European office, and my parents, who were obviously worried sick at this point, just to try and reassure them that I was okay, but that this was going to be a long haul. And then, at around 8:30 PM, 8 hours after the accident originally occurred, my guardian angel arrived. A German chap called Andreas, who'd been teaching at a university a few kilometres down the road, had driven past me at about 1 o'clock on his way to teach a class. At around 8 o'clock, he was then driving back down the road to find that I was still there, and obviously he wasn't having that, so he pulled over to help, and by some freaking miracle, not only did he speak English, but his first wife was from Manchester, he told me, which means that he spoke perfect English. That meant I could explain my whole situation to him, the fact the recovery company didn't know where I was, I didn't really know where I was, and the fact I was totally lost. As luck would have it, the recovery company were back on the phone to me at that point, still trying to work out where I was. Andreas took the phone off me because he explained he knew exactly where we were. This particular junction was a very popular one, this service station was constantly busy, and most people who are local know what it is, where it is, and what it's called. So he got on the phone, explained in perfect detail to the chap on the phone exactly where I was, and within 20 minutes after that, a recovery truck finally arrived, a full 9 hours since the accident occurred. And I wasn't out of the woods just yet, because the recovery driver who'd come with the truck didn't speak one word of English, and of course I only speak very minimal words of German. Thankfully though, Andreas had stuck around. Even though there was a family emergency going on at home, he wasn't going to leave me on my own, so he actually stuck around to help me out. He spoke to the truck driver, explained the situation, told me what I needed to know, and made sure that I got all the documents I needed as far as where the car was being stored. The car was loaded onto the tow truck, and frankly it was an even less pleasant experience than just sitting there next to it, because the more it moved and the more angles I could see for it going up on the truck, the more damage started to reveal itself, and my heart just sank further and further. The recovery driver told me there would be a courtesy car on the way to get me to a hotel and subsequently the airport the following morning. I waited at the service station for an hour and a half and he didn't turn up, but frankly I'd had enough. I'd waited there for over 11 hours in total and I just couldn't do any more. I got a local to call a taxi for me, got a taxi to a hotel, and then the following morning I got another taxi to Berlin Tegel Airport and got a flight back to London Gatwick before my dad picked me up and I was finally safe back in the UK. Unfortunately, for as much as I was safe, the Super Seicento wasn't. The documents I'd been given by the recovery company told me exactly where the car was being kept, but I still had to get it back. It took around 2 weeks of speaking to the recovery company, speaking to other recovery companies, because frankly they wanted to try and charge me almost £1,000 to get the car back, but eventually, as soon as I knew the car was back in the UK, we had it delivered to my dad's workshop, and for the first time in about 2 weeks, I went to see the car.
Oh boy, he's in a bit of a way. And if anything, it's actually slightly worse off than when I last saw it, because there's now a crack in the windscreen. Don't know if you can see that there. The bonnet's hit it, the windscreen is now cracked. That wasn't there before because the bonnet wouldn't go up. What was initially that stance life camber on the front after the accident turned out to be basically where the camber bolt in the coilover had kind of wrenched over. It's now been straightened up, and the wheel now sits pretty much flush with the body, so that's not too bad. We can tell you the radiator's not loving life. There's a massive hole in the gearbox. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a hole there, so that's going to need to be replaced, which is fun. And the bumper is, yeah. We can see that it's been shoved in by some considerable margin. That's what it's supposed to look like. That's what it looks like now, and that is less than fun. So under the bonnet we're not having a good time. Underneath apparently the sump is dented, which is annoying really, because that sump was brand new, but there we go, we'll have to get a replacement one. This wing is not having a good time. The bonnet is bent in every single which way imaginable, and if you couldn't tell, that wing is yeah, I've said in the past how I might think about wide bodying this. I think the car has wide bodied itself, so massive spaces on the way. There is some light at the end of this tunnel because we've had a look sort of around it and briefly underneath it, and it does not appear to be as bad as first feared, because we found a website online, various websites, that can get us this front panel. We may be in with a shout, so we reckon disassemble all the broken bits, take the wing off, take the remains of the bumper off, take the bonnet off. We reckon this can be cut out and unbolted as much as possible, and we might even be able to get a new front section in there. If a new front section goes in there, we might be in with a shout, so you never know. There may be hope. Fingers crossed.
Unfortunately, it looks like they weren't crossed quite hard enough. It's a couple of days later, and in preparation to hopefully try and get the car sorted, to get the damaged bits cut off and to get a new front end welded on and the whole car straightened out, my dad has started taking panels off of the car. There's obviously less of it now than there was a couple of days ago. And unfortunately, the more panels they took off, the more damage they revealed, because initially it looked like it might be savable. Take this bent front panel off, put a new straight one on, and get the whole car aligned and properly straight. However, the damage goes quite a bit further back. That entire chassis leg is in fact completely buckled and is almost irredeemably bent. It might be fixable if we gave them 6 months to do it, but unfortunately the guys here can't dedicate 100% of their time to this car, because of course they do actually have jobs to do as well as just fixing my car, and it would be an enormous amount of work cutting all the bent metal out and straightening what was left, or welding new straight metal in, for us then to discover that the car crabs down the road because bits of the car simply aren't straightenable. Think of bent metal as being a little bit like folded paper. You can fold it back out again, but it will never be the same. Even if by some miracle we got it back into the right shape, that the whole car looked straight and all the panels went back on, it still wouldn't necessarily be straight, and it certainly wouldn't have the same strength. And the first we knew about it would be either when it crabs down the road on its first reassembly drive, or when it was next in an accident. If it was, it would then completely buckle, or worse still, snap in half. It's just not viable, I'm afraid. I've been trying everything. I've spoke to loads of bodywork repair people, and we looked up tons of solutions. We spoke to people, and it's just not going to be doable. There is no viable way to repair this shell and to make it straight, drivable, and most of all safe. More than anything, I want to save this car, because as I'm sure you all know, I absolutely love it. But there comes some times when you just can't do any more, and you can't do enough. There are plans to get the Super Seicento project back up and moving again, but by the looks of things, it's going to be a bit of a long-term one. I've got a few plans I'm trying to work through, so there's probably not going to be any updates on the situation for the Super Seicento for a good month or two, if not more. That said, the show must go on. The channel will continue. I will keep putting videos out, and in fact, there is hopefully a brand new project coming to the channel in the next few weeks or so. The Super Seicento will return, don't you worry about that, but for now, I think we should pay tribute to this fantastic little car. This is my 2002 Fiat Seicento Sporting. You can chuck it in, it grips on. Oh, it's so much fun, this car. Yes! Haha! Finally, it's time to start working on my car, and I absolutely cannot wait. Yes! Oh, it looks great! I've got a spring in my step because the series and the car are going to be hitting a new low. I am super excited to make this thing fast. Very fast.
There's the Super Seicento, and it doesn't look out of place, does it?
There's the Super Seicento looking very snowy. Time for a break. Oh, perfect. Feels like a proper thing now.
Yes! The mighty Super Seicento is free!
Every single thing that was asked of the car, it did, and it did brilliantly, and I could not be more proud of the epic little Super Seicento.